Hey guys, Sandhills Lacrosse Association here. I'm going to show you how to put a pocket in a beginner's girl stick. A lot of times parents that are new to the sport don't want to spend a lot of money, or they're not sure if their daughter's going to commit to it. So they get really whatever's in the beginner pile or whatever's on sale online, and what they end up getting is a stick with no pocket in it. It looks just like a tennis racket. You want a nice pocket right in here, and there's very, very little of one to start with. A lot of the more expensive sticks, the attack sticks, some of the ones with the low profile heads that are a lot more aggressive in their scoop, those come with a pocket that you really can't alter too much. It comes legal right out of the box. It's got a sweet spot, but you're going to pay for it. When I first started coaching and when I first started working with my daughters, I was very frustrated trying to teach them how to throw and catch with really a tennis racket. When I could kind of figure it out, they had a hard time learning it. So I was really frustrated with the quality of sticks that were out there for a cheap price. And honestly, I was pretty critical of a lot of these starter sticks. But having coached now for a few years, I've got a pretty good solution that I recently discovered that anybody can look at and really help their daughter get better with a starter stick or a beginner stick before they move up to the next level of cost. So getting started, the most important thing you need to work on sticks, whether it be stringing a new stick or fixing an older stick, a multi-tool or a pair of needle nose pliers. This is the bargain basement dollar store version of a multi-tool, but all you need is something that's got a good aggressive needle nose kind of grip so you can take apart knots that sometimes get over tightened and it keeps your fingers from just getting kind of worn out. As you can see, this stick is mostly unchanged right out of the box. I think the leathers had an overhand knot in these. This was used at one practice, but it's mostly unchanged. You can see where I tried to stretch a pocket into it a little bit. You see a lot of people putting their heel in it, pulling back on it. That tends to work a little bit, but I'm going to show you some troubled spots that always kind of cause this thing to be a pancake on the back, a tennis racket. And right out of the box there are some things you can change in order to make this more usable and easier for your daughter to throw and catch with. Normally right out of the box you'll see there's a lot of play in your shooting string, okay? And there's always a little bit of play in the top here. When that knot is buried all the way against the head, you'll see it's pretty loose. It's not something you want to create a good pocket. Additionally, when you look at these string jobs, these traditional string jobs, they're kind of intimidating. It looks like a really elaborate weave, when in reality, this whole side on the left side of the leather is one string that comes all the way back around on this side of the runner. Same thing on this side. This is one string that comes up and one string that goes back down. It's not as hard to string these things as it may seem. You want to largely leave the top string alone, and you want to leave your sidewall string alone on your cross mesh here. You don't really need to mess with any of this. In order to get a better pocket in this thing, you're going to want to pull the slack out of this, right? So right off the bat, what I do with a stick is I go ahead, take my needle nose pliers, and I tighten this all the way against it. And then the needle nose pliers are good because you'll see you can actually get a good grip on it. So I'll tighten these up as best you can. So you can see that I tightened this one up. Now there's less slack in that top. And this one here, I'm going to do the same thing. So the best way to do this, leave the knot mostly in place, and you just want to kind of cheat on it. That way you don't have to retie it. Sometimes they're tied too short. Sometimes people clip them and burn them. So you don't want to untie a knot if you don't have to. So you want to just kind of grab it, bury it against that side wall of the frame there. And pull these. You can actually really get after it, pull pretty good. But you want this to be pretty snug because this is what's going to give you a snap. Now looking at these right off the bat, what I like to do, take these two and untie them. This is where your slack is going to come that's going to fix that pocket. So untie these and just leave them hanging. Also, what I like to do is I like to untie these two. And just leave it where you can tighten it down if you need to with just an overhand knot that's there. So now you got these untied. And you got your leathers. I normally clip these off when I'm done too. A lot of people don't do that. Alright, now moving up to the ladder, as you can see, there's a little bit of play with where some of these cross-stitched areas of the runner kind of make contact with this cross lace. Sometimes coming off an assembly line, these are cut out of one giant long piece and they don't tend to line up too well. This one, there's a pretty good amount of play here. Some of them you're not as lucky on that one, so this one will be easier to demonstrate how to fix this. So two things have to happen to put a pocket here. One, we have to actually loosen where the runner is connected to the cross lace, and then we have to increase the distance between the runner and the leather, so that way you don't just get a fold in your runner, you actually loosen a little bit here and make a more rounded pocket. Otherwise the ball will just still ride a little higher in the pocket than you want it to, which is good if you want a sweet spot, but you can do the same thing by just pulling tighter on your leathers once you get this thing done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to cheat this runner up a little bit through this cross lace. So you would think you'd be able to just kind of push or throw around with a ball and eventually make a pocket. And while it does break in the strings, it does break in your leathers, it breaks in your runner, makes it more pliable, this cross lace tends to make a pretty good friction knot, and it tends to bite into this instead of loosen. So you have to actively go through this and cheat it up to get the pocket where you want it. So as you can see, there's a pretty good amount of slack here that you can pull out by just sliding the runner through the individual cross lace one at a time. But you want to cheat it all the way, otherwise it's just going to kind of loosen itself. Once you start messing with these factory tightened laces, you make more of a mushy pocket, and then things tend to slip around a little bit more on you. So as you can see right here, just in sliding that down and keeping these two cross laces where they intertwine, you keep them parallel, you essentially have already put a pocket into this stick, right? So you can see it's still legal, and you can see that the pocket is now formed. However, it's still pretty tight sitting in there up against the leathers. So in order to fix that, you have to take the cross lace here, you need to cheat it up one knot at a time. So that takes a few minutes. What I like to do in order to get the proper amount of distance on here, you've already untied these, so I just go ahead and put a knot to work towards right off the get-go. So normally I need to cheat out about 1 inch. Because I had this much play in the runner and none of these cross laces were really buried up against these things, I was able to pull most of what I need for the pocket out of that. So I'm just going to cheat up about 1/2 inch here. So you want to get these even. And then this is what you want to work back up these strings between the runner and the leather in order to increase the distance here and make more of a rounded pocket for your ball. So as you can see, the knots are equal. They're tight. Now we get started. So I do one at a time. So you pull the slack out all the way, okay? So you want to run this slack up all the way and then divide it up on these last 3 cross laces. That's really where you're going to increase this distance where you want it, because you don't want a low pocket to cradle. You want it to sit sweet spot, you know, right here. Some of the more aggressive heads, like this one here that I'm working on, you can see that one's got really where you want your sweet spot. It's more of a low profile head. Some of these early starter sticks, some of the more beginner sticks, they've got like a really wide opening. It's pretty ergonomic for offense or defense, but you want your sweet spot to sit about the same place, which is just at the bottom of your shooting string here. So anyway, you pull this knot up here, then you want to start working it, right? So if you look at how this thing is done, this is one string, like I said, between the runner and the leather, and all it is intertwined around the leather around the runner, around the leather, around the runner, all the way back up. So you can do the same motions in order to pull it. So you pull it, and you roll your hand, and you pull the slack. And you don't have to be gentle with it either. You're not going to damage it. So then you pull the slack, and you just keep doing that. The first couple are difficult. I always find the bottoms are the hardest to get started. And then once you get up, it tends to get a little more loose. And so from here, all you have to do is roll it in and roll it in, just like that, all the way. You see, you're basically just pulling that slack up. These all stay pretty tight. They loosen up a little bit, which actually makes it a little easier to catch too, because it gets a little bit mushy. But this is where your slack is. All right, and all you're doing is you're just cheating that up. Now keep in mind, if you leave an inch, you're gonna have a lot bigger of a loop by the time you get to here. Okay, so you can see now I've got this much slack still. This is what I'm going to divide up between the three. So I'm going to divide up the slack that I've got between this one and this one. So these are your three that I really take all that slack up to and divide it up between here, here, and here. And as you can see, when you look at it, one side is clearly higher than the other. And that's because we've now increased the distance between the runner and the leather. So when I go to the other side and do the same thing, you'll see it even out. So moving on to the other side, you do the same thing. You just roll your hand. So you can really see this pocket starting to get loose. And that's really what you want. And then again, I'm going to take the slack that I've pulled out, and I'm going to divide it up between these last couple. There you go. And then your last step is to actually make sure that your runner doesn't get like a wavy line to it. You want this railroad track to stay real parallel here. You want roughly, just on inspection, the distance between the runner and the leather to be equal. And then you want to make sure that you haven't pulled too much out of it. So do the old stick check. Still over the sidewall. All right, run it all the way down to the base. You can see that's still perfectly legal, but there's a really gnarly pocket on there. There's going to be a nice snap. If you find your girls shooting a little bit too low, you can always come back under here and you can loosen this shooting string just a little bit. It's really just shooter's preference at that point. I like to kind of keep it like this for a little while. I also like to kind of bounce it around a little bit and just make sure that once you wiggle this thing around, it's still legal, it's still parallel, and it's still equal. So this one here, it's a little questionable. So once that gets wet, once they throw and catch some hard passes, you know, it could possibly become illegal in a game. So it's something to look at. That's also an easy fix. So you can see, you want to make sure that these little cross lace knots are pretty equal too. If you have a bunch of them that are like this, where they're not equal, it's going to tend to pull your runner. So slide those down, and then as they throw and catch, they'll bite back into that runner. So after the first practice or so, I would check it again to see. So if what happened to you happened, or what happened to me happens to you, where you see it kind of sag like that, and now it becomes illegal, you can come down here, like I said, where you've left your overhand knot, Give it a little pull, a little tug. You can see it dragging it down. And this knot I normally leave loose for the first practice and then come back and tighten it later. I just do a couple square knots because it's easy. Left over right, right over left. It shortens it pretty well, and they're easy to get out. So I leave those pretty loose. Something else you can do also, which I recommend, is pull these leathers just until there's a little bit of tension. So what that does is that gives your sweet spot a little bit more snap. And then you definitely want to tie these things off and then clip them. So I know that looks kind of intuitive in order to fix a stick like that. Anybody that really looks at these things and kind of takes one apart, you can learn how to do this. But what I've noticed as the longer I coach, people tend to look at me to fix their sticks, and they come up and say, "Hey coach, I need you to fix my stick," or "I found this old stick in my garage." And if you look at them sideways and you tell them, "I don't know how to do that, somebody else always did that for me," it tends to kind of take away your credibility. So, I advise you guys at least take one of these things apart and see how it works, because then you can help your kids play better. And there's no bigger confidence builder than taking a stick and making it something usable. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Good luck on your season. Thanks a lot for watching.